Seeing as you've already trained with the Kai of North Galaxy, it's pretty easy to teleport to his planet and ask where Namek is. The only problem is, you're not sure how to get there. Sure, you can teleport, although mostly only to places you've been before. You went to Otherworld with the assistance of Kami, and now it's easy to get back. Although you've never been to Namek, so you're going to need to find some new way to transport everybody there. And honestly, that's probably a good thing. You have a bit of a hard time teleporting multiple people long distances, so it'd be pretty hard to bring the entire group to Namek, and you definitely wouldn't be able to do too much on your own there. Especially since you're not in the best shape after fighting against the likes of Great Ape Nappa and Vegeta. Who is still out there? Well, the latter of those two. And if he's on Namek, stronger than ever because of his Zenkai, then you're definitely gonna need some support. Although, while the group is brainstorming, Kami would bring up a pretty useful bit of information. That being that he actually has a ship that can go to Namek, or at least could once upon a time. It's how he, or at least the person he used to be, came to Earth in the first place, and with the aid of Mr. Popo, they would be able to find the ship. Before then, repairing it, and Bulma would be able to reverse engineer it. Sure, they're still going to use the original model, although a bit more fixed up. But seeing as a good part of the group isn't exactly ready for space travel, there will be two separate spaceships made. The first shuttle would be prepared, consisting of Goku, Piccolo, Tien, as well as Gohan. During the battle between the Saiyans and the Z-Fighters, Gohan would have been watching the entire time. And after seeing how his dad and the rest of his buddies were all getting the crap beaten out of him, Gohan would suddenly spike up with rage, showing off his true hidden potential for the first time in this story. It wasn't too impressive, all things considered, only being at a power level of about 8,000 when enraged, but this is still monumental compared to where everybody was only a few years ago. He's also only had a little bit of training from Master Roshi to achieve that kind of power. So what if he were to be trained by his father? As well as the rest of the group, like Piccolo and Tien, martial arts masters in their own right. Well, Gohan could certainly be a formidable force to go against. Going to Namek is a great way to test how good of a warrior Gohan can be in practice rather than in a controlled environment. Although Namek does consist of mostly peaceful people, at least from what Kami can remember. So it's not the most dangerous place in the world, although it could end up being a battleground that Gohan will need to defend himself in, and this would be the perfect conditions to get his rage under control. But before that happens, they would be spending a lot of time in a ship where they can do image training and begin working on bettering Gohan's mental state, allowing him to have control over his rage. Funnily enough, the first spacecraft would also contain Dr. Briefs, who would be there as the scientist, making sure nothing went haywire and everybody inside died in a fiery explosion. That wouldn't exactly be the best thing to happen for your mission. So the group would all head off, and Dr. Briefs would make sure the ship is in tip-top shape the entire ride. The second craft would take a while longer to finish, although eventually it would be done, and you would request a special edition, that being the gravity chamber. You want to make sure you're able to get some good training in while heading to Namek, and you can remember just how intense and effective the gravity on King Kai's planet was for your training. And of course, your loving wife would get right to work, and your daughter would also assist, seeing as she is probably the best technological mind in the world, aside from her mother and maybe grandpa. But after a while of helping mommy, she decides she's pretty bored and would rather lend assistance to you. She wasn't a member of some ultra-powerful space warrior race or some incredibly strong demon, although she was pretty tough in her own right. She was only a little girl, although she had kept up her training after seeing just how much you enjoyed it. And after hearing that Gohan, somebody about her same age, was off on this adventure to space, as well as off training with his papa, she wants to take her turn sparring with you. And since you're not in the best physical shape right now, it's the best training you can do anyways. So for the next couple of weeks, while Bulma continues working on the ship, you would begin teaching Baksa how to fight like a true warrior, as well as teaching her all sorts of fun and powerful techniques. But more than that, you would begin teaching her how to use magic. She is only a kid, so when it comes to actual brute force fighting, she's not going to be very good at it. But with magic, it doesn't matter if you're old and frail or young and weak. All that really matters is your willingness to learn and the time you dedicate to practicing. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't come down to a little bit of specialness. Your talent and affinity for magic does determine how strong you're going to be with it, although thankfully for the two of you, that's not going to be a problem. Every technique you would teach to Boxa, she would learn incredibly quickly, and she would also put her own special twist on a couple of them, like healing for example. Rather than healing other people's wounds and injuries, she would use it to give herself an almost Namekian-like regeneration. This is comforting in all sorts of ways. Not only is your daughter a prodigy, but she also just found a way to make putting her down incredibly difficult. So she'll be safe in pretty much whatever situation she gets herself into. Sadly though, the father-daughter bonding would be cut short, as Bulma would have finished the spaceship. And even though Gohan got to go along to Namek, there's no way you're risking your daughter's life. You tell her to stay here and practice all the techniques you taught her. Boxa would be disappointed she doesn't get to go on this adventure, although since she gets to spend the next couple of weeks with Aunt Tights, she's not too upset about it. Boxa promises that by the time you get back, she'll be even stronger than you are. Even though you doubt this, you say you're looking forward to it. And so you, Raditz, and Bulma would all set off in the second spaceship on course for Planet Namek. You and Raditz would have just finished a grueling training session. You had comparable potential, so throughout the training, both of you were relatively even. You had mastered 100 times gravity and were comfortably sparring in it, although right now you were taking a break and getting some rest, when suddenly Bulma would call you over to come check out Planet Namek. You were currently in the upper atmosphere and were beginning to descend onto the land below. You don't feel like wading through the rest of the bumpy ride down to the ground, so instead you just teleport to where the rest of the gang's energy is felt. Although after arriving, you're surprised to see that they're in the middle of a battle, one with the Ginyu Force. And even though Goku is a part of the group here, it's still not as easy as you might have hoped, seeing as Goku's only half as strong as he was in canon and doesn't have Kaioken. Sure, he didn't do gravity training, but he would have still gotten his potential unlocked from Guru, so his power level's probably around 50,000. This alone wouldn't be a problem if he knew the Kaioken, but since he doesn't, this means even the likes of Rakum is a challenge for him. But you know who does know the Kaioken? Piccolo. And seeing as Piccolo regularly uses image training and thus wasn't very restricted during his time going to Namek, he's definitely able to give the Ginyu Force a good run for their money. And after having his potential unleashed by Guru, he might even be able to take on First Form Frieza. Although because of this massive leap in power compared to pretty much everybody else, Ginyu would see Piccolo as the prime target for body swapping. But it's not going to be that easy. Ginyu would try and use his body change technique, although Piccolo would instead just counter with a Masenko and Kaioken times 20. The attack is so fast, Ginyu can't even see it coming. It outspeeds his technique, and suddenly the entire top half of his body is completely gone. What's left of his stomach and legs would then fall to the ground. Piccolo would make sure to vaporize that as well, not knowing if Ginyu can regenerate, but better be safe than sorry, right? The Namekian warrior would then head back to help Goku and Vegeta, who were previously tag-teaming the rest of the Ginyu Force. Although, little did he know, you had already stepped in to handle the entire rest of the group on your own. When you arrived, you saw Rakum giving the works to Vegeta, overpowering him and nearly about to kill the Saiyan Prince. So you would step in, and with a single chop to the back of the neck, you land the ginger-haired warrior down to his knees completely unconscious. Vegeta would then use a point-blank Big Bang attack to completely incinerate Rakum's body.
Ha! Take that, you big dumb bastard. I, Prince Vegeta, am Oh, God! Oh God, it hurts to move.
You're not sure whether or not Vegeta's an ally yet, so instead you decide to leave him how he is. He'll still survive, so you choose not to heal any of his wounds, and instead go help Goku take down the rest of the Ginyu Force. About this same time, Bulma and Raditz would arrive on the planet properly, although you're more focused on taking down Jace and Berta. the latter of which says something that really piques your interest. He declares himself the fastest in the universe, something you're more than willing to put to the test. For the first time on Namek, you would show off your full power, and Birder is shocked. He doesn't have a scouter, but he can still feel the strength emanating off of you. You would begin running laps around him, and even though he can still keep up, once you amp it to Kaioken times 5, you're leaving after images. He can barely even perceive what you're doing as you begin circling around faster and faster. After a while, he can't even see you, so you decide to end things quick. You stick your hand straight through his chest where you think his heart is. Even if it's not, this would still end up being a fatal blow, and Birder would fall to the ground cold and lifeless. Jace would be enraged. He wants to rush and attack you, although he realizes that's probably not the best idea. So he instead prepares to flee, although Vegeta is not going to let that happen. Raditz would have given him a Senzu, and now he's in fighting shape. It only takes a single kick to land Jace on the ground, before then using a barrage of Ki Blast to incinerate him. Goku doesn't love all the needless killing, although he has to admit it was probably the best call. And after seeing what the Ginyus were doing to Gohan, yeah, maybe they got what was coming to them. Although now with the group all back together, they would begin discussing what to do next, seeing as they've already pretty much prevented Frieza from becoming immortal. Piccolo would have grabbed all of the Dragon Balls that Ginyu was guarding, so even if Frieza was able to find an Namekian to teach him the passcode, there's no way he'd be able to have his wish granted. Speaking of though, Nail would quickly realize that this quote-unquote interrogation he's going through, pretty much just Frieza using him as a punching bag, is going to prove fatal soon. So he decides, as one final up yours to the Emperor, he explains exactly what he's been doing. Buying time. And oh boy, is Frieza absolutely livid. He realizes the Earthlings probably have the Dragon Balls, and they might even have the password if there really is another Namekian out there, something Nail would have admitted. Everybody would feel Nail's energy rapidly dropping, although he is still alive. However, Frieza's coming to their location and fast. So Piccolo would rush over to go help Nail, while the rest of the group prepares to face off against the Tyrant. Tien would bring all of the non-combatants, or people who were too injured to fight, back to the ship, as in Goku, Dr. Briefs, Bulma, and Vegeta. Now don't worry, there wouldn't be any funny business going on between Vegeta and Bulma, although the Prince of the Saiyans would at least shoot a shot, even if it is turned down. They would use healing bonds to get the rest of the group up to fighting shape, and as Goku and Vegeta are sitting in their own respective pods, they would slowly be getting stronger and stronger, the Zenkai taking effect. When Frieza arrives to the battlefield, he would only be faced with two real challengers, you and Raditz. And even though you are the strongest of the group, undeniably, you're not sure if you're going to be able to take Frieza down. Frieza's first form would be no sweat, you'd practically be bullying him. So instead of going to his second form, he immediately skips to third. And this is where you have some problems. You can only really push Kaioken up to about times 10 or maybe 15 if you're lucky, although times 20 isn't exactly up your alley, and even that might not be enough. So instead, you try and have Great Ape Raditz take the brunt of most of Frieza's attacks, where you mostly just slip in to land some cheap shots every now and again. And even though the battle already isn't going in your favor, Frieza would say something that absolutely terrifies you. Only a couple of words, although they send shivers down your spine.
This isn't even my final form.
Then, with a shout to rock the heavens, Frieza begins to power up yet again. You would try and rush in and stop him, you're not just going to stand there while he powers up, although there's nothing you can do. Once the transformation begins, his power is already leagues beyond yours. You hate to say it, but at this point, you're powerless against this absolute monster. Thankfully though, you won't have to face against this tyrant alone, as Goku and Vegeta would both burst out of their healing pods, now with power levels of about 1.5 million each. And at about that same time, Piccolo would arrive back to help fight, and he's just absorbed Nail, meaning his base strength is already exponentially boosted, as well as the fact he can still use Kaioken. You would jokingly ask where your massive power-up is, before then casting spells on the entire group, allowing for a little bit of extra protection. You tell everybody that you've got no more juice left in the tank, so if anybody goes down, it's for keeps. Although, as these words escape your mouth, Frieza would have suddenly finished his transformation, and then he points a finger out, launching a death beam in your direction before instantly piercing your heart. A cold silence would break the air. Raditz would scream out, having actually grown attached to you. Tien would shed a single tear, as Goku would get enraged, his hair beginning to spike up before falling back down, although he shoots Frieza a death glare. He might not be a Super Saiyan, but Frieza is about to feel true fear. Although, as it turns out, not from any of the Saiyans, as lava would begin to shoot out of the ground, spitting around. The sky would turn dark on a world with 2 suns. The winds would begin to intensify, air rushing past everybody as sharp as a knife, as suddenly a white glow would emit around your body, soon evolving into a giant orb of pure energy. It would begin to crack and eventually shatter open as you were revealed standing there in a brilliant new transformation.
I've overcome death. Let's see if you can do the same.